The Biden administration was also generally concerned with AI safety. I think it was influenced by people who care about AI safety. And that's created a kind of backlash from the accelerationist, or what gets called the accelerationist side of this debate. So I want to play a clip for you from Mark Andreessen, who is obviously a very significant venture capitalist, a top Trump advisor, describing the conversations he had with the Biden administration on AI and how they sort of radicalized him in the other direction.
Ben and I went to Washington in May of 24, and, we couldn't meet with Biden because, as it turns out, at the time, nobody could meet with Biden. But we were able to meet with senior staff. And so we met with very senior people in the White House, in the inner core. And we basically relayed our concerns about AI. And their response to us was, yes, the national agenda on AI, as we will implement in the Biden administration and in the second term, is we are going to make sure that AI is going to be only a function of 2 or 3 large companies. We will directly regulate and control those companies. There will be no startups. This whole thing where you guys think you can just start companies and write code and release code on the internet, those days are over. That's not happening.
The conversation he's describing there, were you part of that conversation?
I met with him once. I don't know exactly, but I met with him once.
Would that characterize the conversation he had with you?
He talked about concerns related to startups and competitiveness and the like. My view on this is you look at our record on competitiveness, it's pretty clear that we want a dynamic ecosystem. So the AI executive order, which President Trump just repealed, had a pretty lengthy section on competitiveness. The Office of Management and Budget Management memo, which governs how the U.S. government buys AI, had a whole carve out in it, or a call out in it, saying we want to buy from a wide variety of vendors. The Chips and Science Act has a bunch of things in there about competition. So I think our view on competition is pretty clear. Now, I do think there are structural dynamics related to scaling laws and the like that will force things towards big companies that I think in many respects we were pushing against. And I think the track record is pretty clear of us in competition.
I think the view that I understand him as arguing with, which is a view I've heard from people in the AI safety community, but is not a view I necessarily heard from the Biden administration, was that you will need to regulate the frontier models of the biggest labs when it gets sufficiently powerful. And in order to do that, you will need there to be controls on those models. You just can't have the model weights and everything floating around so everybody can run this on, their home laptop. I think that's the tension he's getting at. It gets at a bigger tension we'll talk about in a minute, but which is how much to regulate this incredibly powerful and fast-changing technology, such that on the one hand, you're keeping it safe, but on the other hand, you're not overly slowing it down or making it impossible for smaller companies to comply with these new regulations as they're using more and more powerful systems.
Yeah, so in the president's executive order, we actually tried to wrestle with this question, and we didn't have an answer when that order was signed in October of 23. And what we did on the open source question in particular, and I think we should just be precise here at the risk of being academic again, what we're talking about are open weight systems.
Can you just say what weights are in this context and then what open weights are?
Yeah. So when you have the training process for an AI system, you run this algorithm through this huge amount of computational power that processes the data. The output at the end of that training process, loosely speaking, and I stress this is the loosest possible analogy, they are roughly akin to the strength of connections between the neurons in your brain. And in some sense, you could think of this as the raw AI system. And when you have these weights, one thing that some companies like Meta and DeepSeek choose to do is they publish them out on the internet, which makes them, we call them open weight systems. I'm a huge believer in the open source ecosystem. Many of the companies that publish the weights of their system do not make them open source. They don't publish the code and the like. So I don't think they should get the credit of being called open source systems, at the risk of being pedantic. But open weight systems is something we thought a lot about in 23 and 24. And we sent out a pretty wide ranging request for comment from a lot of folks. We got a lot of comments back. And what we came to in the report that was published in July or so of 24 was there is not evidence yet to constrain the open weight ecosystem, that the open weight ecosystem does a lot for innovation and the like, which I think is manifestly true, but that we should continue to monitor this as the technology gets better, basically exactly in the way that you described.